Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Turgay Temur. I'm the head of business development at VLine Europe in Germany, and welcome you to today's video podcast informing you, our customers, about our measures taken to avoid or keep the impact of our common supply chain as small as possible. I'm not alone. My colleague, Mr. Molham Shallal, member of the supply chain task force in our VLine US office, and Mr. Karnik, logistics manager in VLine Germany, are our experts today. This is what we're going to look at. The corona situation has hit the world completely, but each country or company at a different time or differently intensive. We take a look at the supply chain and start at the production and delivery situation in Europe and later in the US. Jump into the inbound logistics situation and turn to the main supply chain. From these origins to our final destinations in the GCC countries. To keep this short and interesting, we will limit this trip to 30 minutes of your precious time. As VLine is your procurement arm for Europe, our main suppliers are located in the 27 countries of the European Union, but we are additionally taking care about other origins as well to provide a full procurement service. Each of these countries has different corona-related impacts, and the related governments have taken different measures to control or reduce the cases. All placed and not yet delivered items to our existing POs have been analyzed and classified according to supplier countries. In order to take into account that different countries and company situations described before, we built up a special task force at the very early stage, which immediately contacted the suppliers and examined possible production or delivery problems. In addition, the supply capability of the chain was checked and internationally entered into our customer reporting. Let's take a look to the situation overall, POs which are handled by VLine Europe. We are taking the traffic light principle. Green is fine, orange is critical, and red is a real problem. So if you look at this chart, green are 82% means makers are available, items are without a delay. Then we have yellow, maker available, items are delayed. And orange is maker is unclear. We have no situation, no information at the moment. We are contacting him, but have not received a further status. And red is where the maker is already shut down, and we have no information at all. If we go into, I mean, this picture in Europe is already, let's say, is looking quite good. It's 82%. But if you look into different countries, which we want to take now, look, is totally different. So, for example, if you go into Germany, we have 86% under control, 7% delayed, 5.8% at the moment critical, and only 0.3% shut down. If we change to the situation in Italy, we see that the picture is totally different. We have 45, means the major of the items shut down. We have 1.7% already delayed, 36% on time, and 16% where we have to go into contact when the maker is available again. If you go further to the other three or the next most important countries in Europe, so we come up to Great Britain, we come up to France and Spain, and see that Spain and Great Britain are also having or facing problems. So Great Britain 85% okay, 8.3% shutdown. In Spain, we have a much bigger portion of 11.7% shutdown, 15% approximately unclear. And in France, the items which are on time are high, but we have a high portion of unclear situation and a little portion of shutdowns. This information of the manufacturers have been combined with the situation of the European countries. Here we are. Here you see an information coming from DHL, which is daily updated, and we see already that the peak has, or not the peak, the situation of Corona has hit us already early. So due to this situation, it looks like that the peak has already been taken, and the situation is already getting better. So we have three restrictions, or three kind of restrictions. We have limited restrictions, we have moderate restrictions, and significant restrictions. And we see that Italy is still having significant shutdowns, social distancing, lockdown, and non-essential business is also shut down. So due to this situation, each of these countries have taken different measures and has also given different end of lockdowns or start of gradual lifting days. So due to this situation, each country is reacting according to the new information provided by the Corona experts. This is the situation from Europe. Now I would like to hand over to Mr. Molham to inform us about the situation in the United States.
Thank you, Turgay. I would like to discuss the situation in the United States and how it's reflected on the operations of VLine USA. The US has 50 different states, and due to its unique geographical and political orientation, it makes it more comparable to the European Union as a whole than just to individual countries. I'm going to discuss different corona-related impacts on the operations at each state and different measures taken by the governments of each state to mitigate this pandemic. Moving on, there's a pie chart about, next slide. Yeah, there's this, so you could see here there's different durations of restrictions to each state. It's because each state issued their own stay-at-home order. And I would like to focus on 4 main states, and that's going to become important later on during this presentation. The states are New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Texas. Due to VLine USA's commitment to local sustainable procurement, 3 states, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, comprise 59% of the total procurement for VLine USA. So I would like to focus on those 3 as well as Texas. That's a major wealthy state that has a high influence on the US economy and how businesses are distributed in the United States. As you can see here, each state issued their own stay-at-home order on different dates, depending on how high of an impact the coronavirus pandemic had on each one. Some states already started lifting restrictions. So you could see here states like Texas, which is one of the main states we want to focus on, as well as Georgia, have already started lifting different restrictions. For example, Texas had only a 29-day duration stay-at-home order, while other states have indefinite end date for them lifting restrictions, such as California and New Jersey. New Jersey comprises around 37%, if I remember correctly, of the total procurement, since it's the home state for VLine USA. Um, Moving on, we're going to see how each state is impacted based on different types of restrictions. So there's social distancing and lockdown. We can see Georgia and Texas has already started to lift restrictions related to policies of how social distancing is supposed to happen. They're starting to lift lockdowns. The state of Texas and Georgia have already started opening up restaurants and other establishments, stores for the public. Um, as for impact on non-essential businesses, you could see here that Pennsylvania has a very heavy restrictions on non-essential businesses, where you could see that non-essential businesses are virtually closed or completely shut down or operate on very limited limited pace. As for restrictions at land borders, despite those states being different from each other, they still share the same federal government. So they still share the same borders in the same country. So restrictions at land borders between different states are very minimal compared to Europe, for example, because it's practically the same country. Moving on, I would like to show you a pie chart that has different percentages um, of the amount of items procured uh, by VLine from each state. So remember, we said that the three main states were New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York, which comprise 59%. New Jersey alone comprises almost 39% of New Jersey's total procurement. One very important state is the state of Texas. We mentioned it's a very wealthy state with a huge impact on the US economy. And those percentages are going to become important for the next slide. So moving on, this is the overall status of our current orders, and the US's orientation towards a very aggressive business mindset is reflected on this statistic. So we could see here that mostly our operations remain unaffected, and we only observe total closures, which are highlighted in red, only a couple of times. So that's a very minimal 0.39%. We were able to get, if we go back, we were able to get information about most of our open orders. As for each state, the statistic doesn't differ that much. It's consistent through different states, unlike what we saw with Europe. So it's basically the same thing. It's mostly unaffected, and for some states, there's a high percentage of unclear or no information, which is due to how different those companies operate and their different business culture related to each state. Only a small percentage of items have been delayed, and they're comparable to the amount of items delayed for Germany, for example. So they're around 4 or 5, from 4 to 7%, depending on which state we're talking about. But largely, the United States remains in a very good state business-wise. So most of our orders remain unaffected by this pandemic. I would like to switch to Daniel, and he's going to go through different impacts related to logistics and how that influences your supply chain.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. This is a really nice and interesting overview about the situation on the origin side at suppliers, at manufacturers, and how we get in the goods. The supply chain has two major parts in terms of transportation. We call it, one side is the inbound logistic, and later we have the outbound logistics. We noticed, and you already, Molham, told us, and Turgay also said in a few words, that the domestic road transportation in Germany, but also in Europe, is not really affected. At least we could not see some huge impact on the lead times. Same situation we noticed in the United States. So it means inside the closed areas, closed in the topic of Europe or USA, inside this area, the local road transportation is very smooth and running fine. Only inside European community, we have some minor delays because of some additional checkpoints at the borders, but these are more or less minimal delays, 1 day, maybe 2 days. In general, situation is very good in this way. For some cross-trade shipments, we are more in the part of the international global transportation. And here we are really depending on the situation in the different countries. If we see the lockdown and the restrictions, for example, in South Africa, India, China, also in South Korea, there we have some huge limitations. And we noticed that especially from these countries, several cross-trade shipments are blocked or stuck somewhere, stuck at the manufacturer warehouse, stuck at the airport or seaports because of very strict regulations or simply because of non-existing freight capacities. This is also my next topic, the global situation in terms of freight capacity changed tremendously. And the major issue is for air freight. Around about 70% of all air freight cargo is going by belly freight, or it's called passenger flights. So a big part of the air cargo is transported on regular flights and regular planes. Due to the extreme cut of these passenger flights, and you see from Europe to the USA, nearly 100%, it's around about 95% of the flights are completely cancelled from one day to the next. This has a huge impact, or had a huge impact, on the freight space capacities, and the same is in all directions all over the world, also to KSA. So the immediate reaction of the carriers, of the air cargo companies and forwarders was to try to compensate this reduction by cargo charter aircrafts and so on and so on. But this took time because more or less all cargo flights or cargo planes were booked. Interesting to know is that the courier shipments, doesn't matter what company, the courier shipments are still ongoing. The reason is these companies are using their own equipment, their own aircraft, their own trucks, they have their own hubs and terminals all over the world, and they are only using cargo aircraft, so no real impact. On sea freight capacities, we noticed a big drop because a lot of empty containers were stuck in China when the pandemic begins there in January. So all the empty containers are there, but could not filled and could not transported. We had a lot of empty sailings, but now comes back to a more or less acceptable level. Inside Saudi Arabia, this is a major market we are talking about today, everything is running, but for sure on limited capacity. Saudi customs reduced manpower. We have some local lockdowns, some local limitations. It is not a completely lockdown or governmental lockdown, but due to the rules, also the hygienic rules, the performance and speed is not as we used to have in the past. I try to show you on the next two slides the impact on the air freight. You see, this is around about beginning of April, and how much it dropped on freight capacities. And if you have your regular flight once a week from Europe or the United States or any other place in the world to your home, you see if it is reduced by 35%, this is a really big issue. Fortunately, it already improved a little bit. In end of May, the reduction of 35% was compensated a little bit. Now we are on 29%. You can see the relations are still the same all over the world. The airlines and the transportation companies and forwarders try to compensate by moving the empty freight planes around the original destinations. And also you saw the picture 2 or 3 slides before, to use or misuse passenger flights, passenger planes for air cargo. Yeah. All this for sure had an impact in the freight charges, but now the capacities are more or less recovering. You see the same for sea freight. Compared to the last year, we have also a huge drop of capacities here. It started, as I said, in China, because the empty containers were stuck there. And if you have an interruption in the cycle of the container and the vessels and the sailings, it will affect all over the world. And it hit us 6 or 8 weeks later. And now in Germany, we are on the way to recover from this impact. So step by step, slowly the capacities are recovering, and more sailings, more and more containers are available. But it was an impact we noticed in our material flow for sure. This is an overview how the mode of transport has an impact in the on-time performance, on-time delivery. You see the 2 cake shots. It shows the spread of the mode of transportation we used to have for our shipments. So in average, on the left side, it is a little bit more than 50%. It is 58% is going by courier shipments, and then 18 by sea freight, and 24% are going by air freight. This is because of the terms of the conditions of the contracts and agreements. If you see, or if you use the size dimensions of the shipments, the picture looks different. Under the VLine Express terms, it means we are considering the freight terms and the condition of the commodities of the shipments. It could have 16% more for courier shipments at the same time. This is because many items or many shipments are scheduled by sea freight, even though they would be suitable for courier shipments. This is because of established processes, of established routines and agreements. And by utilizing different options and models, we could have increased the on-time percentage by 60%. You see it in a different perspective on the next slide. In terms of delivery time, we learned out of this Corona pandemic that very well established and very well fixed processes and agreements could avoid from reacting flexible and dynamic. From our statistics and from our figures, we learned one slide before that 16% more of our shipments could have been shipped by courier without a real huge impact on the charges. But by reducing the on-time delivery and the increasing the availability in a very good manner. There are some terms I said before. The VLine Express service requires some terms and agreements, how we can handle this. We need to take control on the process. We need to have the ownership. This enables us to be independent from one or two forwarders. We can utilize the best available freight space. We do not have to wait until one forwarder have a next capacities on a flight or next capacities on a vessel. We can utilize our logistic network. We can review it from 1 hour to the next, from one partner to the other partner, just to keep the delivery time and the OTD in the focus. All this, by using all this, we can also benefit from let's say, easy processes, fast processes. We see it from courier shipments. Courier shipments will be handled electronically. The customs clearance is done in advance, not on arrival. All this saves time, this saves manual hand-on, reduces manpower you need to handle this. And finally, by handling many different shipments under these terms or many different POs, we can generate some effects on consolidation here at our side or at the origin side. So we reduce number of shipments, we reduce counts on transportations you have to handle, and this kind of flexibility would be able under the VLine Express model. And as I said, the Corona pandemic showed us that it is sometimes difficult or challenging if you insist on fixed agreements and processes, and we could have avoided this by using different models. Turgay, some questions?
But this means that that at least not each order has to be asked for a change. No? So there should be a, let's say, general agreement how these orders have to be handled. Otherwise, it is also delaying the process.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you very much, Daniel, for wrapping up the logistics situation. I just would like to wrap up the webinar a little bit. So situation in each country and state at each maker was different. So due to this situation, we have built up this task force, and the result was immediate access to makers, create an immediate customer information, which was very important. But on the other side, we got the feedback from our customers back that not only the immediate information is important, it's also the reliability of the information, which gives the possibility to update the end user on time and to prioritize what is the actual situation and how to manage the part which is delayed or which is coming on time. Proactive export forward information to the main logistics or contract forwarders, let's say, is used also for a capacity planning at forwarders side. And VLine, if VLine can change, this was your point, Daniel, if VLine can change the mode of transportation, we can increase the deliveries on time, but the rules, as I said before, should be defined, otherwise we are running into the next pitfall.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think we are nearly on time, so 30 minutes have met. I have also a question for us who made this webinar. Are you interested in a webinar regarding this topic, maybe again, or maybe also in a certain period, let's say bi-weekly, because we all know that we will not come soon to a normal.
Yes.
So I think we can just come to a new normal. So maybe up to reaching a more safer status, it is important to get this kind of information, let's say, more frequently. This would be interesting. So if you would give us the feedback to this question, this would be nice. And if you have any other feedback, maybe a dialogue or any other hints which you want to give us, we would be pleased to get your information via email. So please send it to me at temur@vline.com. I hope this was interesting for you. Thank you, gentlemen, that you helped us.
Thank you very much.
All this information. Thank you very much for joining us and watching this video. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.